Our next speaker, Beth Piknick, a registered nurse in settings of lifting patients, moving patients, struggling with patients. She's no longer able to care for patients because of the injuries she's received. A back injury that could have been prevented cut short her career in healthcare nursing. Beth, come tell us your story.
Good morning. I wasn't sure I was going to get here this morning. I took a detour via Virginia. Good morning. My name is Beth Piknick, and I'm a registered nurse and member of the Massachusetts Nurses Association. I'm here today representing the American Nurses Association and the 2.6 million registered nurses in this country to voice our strong support for OSHA's Ergonomic Standard. I am also here today because while working as an intensive care unit nurse, I suffered a career-ending back injury that was devastating, both personally and professionally. And this injury was preventable. I am determined to make sure that what happened to me does not happen to other healthcare workers. This standard is a step toward that goal. Moving patients from their beds to chairs and vice versa was one of many lifting maneuvers I performed throughout my career. I would twist, bend, pull, and push. It was part of the job. I never had any back problems, but on February 17, 1992, while leaning over a patient to move him, I severely injured my back. I went to physicians, surgeons, and physical therapists determined to get back to work, but I remained in pain. During the 2 years after the injury, I had spinal fusion surgery, which involved major rehabilitation before and after the surgery. I was willing to go through whatever I had to, but my major goal was to get back to the job I loved, which was taking care of critically ill patients and their families. But after the surgery and physical therapy, that still remains possible. I am finally somewhat I can be pain-free, but I have to work hard to remain that way. I cannot stand for long periods of time without support. I can only sit in certain chairs. I cannot lift or do any repetitive bending or twisting motions. Before my injury, I was an active person who enjoyed bicycling, competitive racquetball, water skiing, and yearly whitewater rafting trips with my family, all of which I can no longer do. Due to the injury, I have been relegated to a light-duty job performing tuberculosis surveillance activities for our employee health department. This is not why I became a nurse. I became a nurse to take care of patients. My identity has been based on being a nurse in the intensive care unit. The inability, which I did for 21 years, by the way, the inability to care for patients was devastating and sent me into 4.5 years of clinical depression. My family has had to cope with both my physical and psychological problems. It was horrendous. And 7 years later, I am just beginning to adjust. One of the worst moments in this whole experience was when I learned that my injury could have been prevented. I, like most nurses, assumed that lifting was just part of the job. At the time of my injury, I did not know that there were lifting devices commercially available and that my hospital simply chose not to have them. My hospital is only now starting to implement the use of lifting devices. Healthcare workers continue to face an increasingly hazardous work environment. While caring for others, we put our health and sometimes our lives at risk. This cannot continue. With this standard, healthcare facilities will have to develop back injury prevention programs that will involve frontline healthcare workers. Engineering controls like lifting devices must be the primary means of prevention. Single-person lifts without assistive staff or devices should be eliminated, which means hospitals will have to ensure adequate staffing. By protecting workers from injury, healthcare facilities can also invest in retaining a cadre of experienced, healthy nurses, which is particularly important in this time of increasing nursing shortages. If this standard had been in place in 1992, I would still be living the active life that I love. I would be able to stand and have a conversation without pain. I would still be doing what I love, taking care of my patients. Thank you.